What's up, Hope Valley? My name's Katie. I'm going to be sharing a little word of encouragement with you guys this morning. Be looking in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 11 through 13. So while you guys are flipping open there, just give a little bit of context. The letters 1st and 2nd Timothy were letters that Paul wrote to Timothy while he was in prison awaiting his execution. So in many ways, Timothy was like a spiritual son to Paul. So you could almost read these letters as if it were the last words of wisdom that a father wanted to impart to his son, like on his deathbed. So it makes a lot of this pretty heavy. But I'm going to go ahead and read it. So I'm reading in the ESV, starting in verse 11. But as for you, O man of God, flee these things. Pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, gentleness. Fight the good fight of the faith. Take hold of the eternal life to which you are called, and about which you made the good confession in the presence of many witnesses. So, fighting the good fight. What is the fight? The fight is not going to kickboxing and hashing it out. The fight is not just a brawl with some of your buddies. The fight was actually in the Greek was called agwan, was the Greek word, and it actually correlated to like a competition, more specifically an Olympic competition. So the good fight of the faith is like like the Olympics. So no joke. So pretty serious stuff. Just further illustrates that imagery when he goes on in verse 13 and says that you did this in the presence of many witnesses. So imagine yourself as an Olympic athlete standing in a stadium and you're doing whatever you imagine yourself doing, throwing javelins or running around the track or whatever it may be. And there's hundreds of thousands of people in the stadium, in the stands watching you. It's pretty heavy stuff. So how do we fight the good fight? Paul tells us in verse 11, he gives us 6 tools to help us fight the good fight. He tells us to pursue, first, righteousness. I wanted to kind of break apart some of these words because they can be a little bit like Christian words. So how do we pursue righteousness? Righteousness is the quality of being morally right or justifiable, or it could be described as right standing with God. So how do we get that? How do we pursue righteousness? Well, bad news is Romans 3 tells us that there is none that is righteous, not even one. So we could try to pursue righteousness all day and never be successful. But so that's bad news. But there's good news to that. So Romans 1:16 and 17. Romans 1:16 says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew first and also for the Greek. For in it, the righteousness of God is revealed to faith." So what does that mean? So the only way, because we were never going to be righteous. We were never going to be righteous on our own. There was no way for us to be justifiable or morally right before God. But through the gospel, we are able to inherit the righteousness of Jesus and his blood. So that's the good news. So the only way to pursue righteousness is to pursue Jesus himself and a relationship with him. So the second thing is godliness. I sometimes get this confused with righteousness myself. So I had to look this up a little bit. But in this context, more commonly aligns with piety, and piety being reverence for God. So lifting God high. Another way to lift him high is to bring ourselves low. So in some ways, it's either lifting him high or it's humility. So righteousness is like a standing that God gave to us. Godliness we can look at as a posture that we have to him. So those are 2 things. The third thing is faith. Faith is something that we could go on about for days and days, but I just love Hebrews 11 that says, "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen." So imagine yourself running that race in the Olympic stadium and you can't see the finish line. You don't know what it looks like at the end, but you know it's there. And so that's running the race, knowing that it's there, knowing that this race is not meaningless and just continuing. The fourth thing is love. Love is another one of those that you could go on and on about, but I love 1 Corinthians 13, talks about love. It tells us what love is and isn't. You guys can go look at that for yourself. But something that I love that it concludes with is it says that love never ends. Faith might end, because when we get to the finish line, we don't need faith anymore. But love never ends. So I love that. Pursue love. The fifth thing is steadfastness. Steadfastness is defined as the quality of being resolutely or dutifully firm or unwavering. So, steadfastness is like you running that race. Imagine watching this athlete running around a track, and there's hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, and they just continue at the same pace going. They have competition coming up next to them. They have people taunting in their face, but they are fixed. There's nothing that can have them turn from side to side, and they just keep going. That's like steadfastness. You could call it stubborn, I guess, in a way, but I think it correlates too with perseverance and endurance. So unstoppable. The last thing is gentleness. Gentleness is defined as being kind, tender, or mild-mannered. But something that I love that I heard somebody say once is that gentleness is power under control. And I love that because that's the way that God interacts with us, that he is all-powerful, that he is capable of taking us out, but he doesn't. He interacts with us tenderly and kindly. So these are the 6 things that Paul tells us to pursue in order to run this race well, to fight the good fight well. I know for me, speaking personally, with the pandemic, in the beginning I was really disciplined, but as we started to see that our world wasn't going to change right away, my hope started to diminish, and I started to get lazy. And so reading this again brought me a lot of encouragement to really fight the good fight, to continue. So I hope that this encourages you guys to keep fighting the good fight. Fight this week. Love y'all.